everybody, this is Kevin Till, Koi Medic again, and today we're in a very, very special venue. We're at Warren Ebersohn and his family's beautiful home. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be showcasing the most beautiful koi pond and water features and natural environment. And speaking about natural environment, this is exactly what we are homing in on today. It is water, the clear understanding of water and the filtration and how the process of water works. So often the question is begged, why are my fish dying? And here's 98% of the answer. In a nutshell, the water cycle and life cycle is exactly the same. So water is critical for life. So what we want to do is now, because water is so very, very important to the cycle of life, we need to understand how water works. So what we want to really do is, we want to picture that we're at a river or a stream. And I want you to picture how the water flows and through the pebbles and also through the various aspects of the water plants that is on the side of the stream or the river. Just have a look at when it rains. Your water then is soft water, meaning that it is acidic. And in many instances, koi ponds are exposed to a lot of rainwater. And then people want to know, why are my fish lethargic? Why is there a change in their behavior? Well, because my pH has become more acidic at that given moment. But let's continue with it. So what happens is that once the water falls onto the ground, normal rainwater, it then flows and it then starts being absorbed by the earth. And as it's going through the earth, it is picking up certain nutrients, minerals, ions that are in the soil. Good minerals, and sometimes minerals such as magnesium and zinc and iron and so forth. But what it does is the water itself is now busy picking up, and from being an acidic water, it's now starting to harden by collecting more minerals as it is flowing through the soil and picking up nutrients. Now, the more that happens, the more your water becomes hard. In other words, alkaline. Now, alkalinity is very, very good because you want your pH to be on a more alkaline level rather than a very acidic level. So you want to have a good balance. Iron and zinc, which is vital for organisms to live, and that is what they commonly call trace elements that the water is picking up. So from rain, it is gone, it's filtered through rocks, pebbles, into the sand, and it is picking up good minerals. The hard water metal ions are then locked up. In other words, they are making it less harmful. So locked up meaning that they're at a capacity now where they are full of minerals. And that's when your water is then more alkaline. Not totally alkaline off the chart, but on an alkaline level of around about 8.5. And depending on the surroundings and your environment and where you are, wherever you live, one needs to also assess that. So then from that perspective, that's how the water is then refreshed. And then of course it goes back into the river and the stream, and it gets evaporated, and the cycle of water changes. Understand one thing, alkaline water acts as a buffer to many diseases. So now let's come back to the koi pond. What has it got to do in relation to the koi pond? It's exactly that. Your koi pond has a filtration system. Now, a river doesn't have a filtration system, but it does. It doesn't have a physical system like you would have in a koi pond, but we want to mimic that. And it is sometimes very, very difficult to do that. So we need to understand, first of all, how water works so that we can mimic this beautiful natural process and cycle of water to have healthy fish in your koi pond. So let's start off then, and we have a look at what koi do in ponds. Koi produce nitrogenous waste. What is that? Fish food in, fish food out, and we create NH3, which is ammonia. Of course, from that other waste is like urea, and then of course, what happens during that process, it then needs good bacteria to start breaking down the waste. So picture, somebody once said that a koi pond is like a sewage system. And I was quite shocked at that. But if you really think about it logically, that's exactly what it is, but in a different format. Because you've got waste that's in water, flowing in water. Your filtration is now busy taking care of all of that. There's aerobic, anaerobic bacteria. Aerobic due to oxygen, the good bacteria that's busy breaking down all the solids, and that is busy filtering all the solids through so that it can go into waste. And that's exactly how a sewer system basically works. But every sewer system needs exactly what a koi pond has got in terms of good bacteria so that it can break down. Otherwise, it would never be able to do that. And of course, aeration. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So what happens with the breakdown? The good bacteria breaks the waste down, and then the next level is then it moves over into NO2, which is nitrite. Now, nitrite is a gas. So this is a critical time as well, because nitrite, you want your levels of nitrite to be as low as possible. So in other words, you need to be very, very careful about your filtration system and how the filter system is working. Remember, your koi pond needs to breathe. There mustn't be stagnant areas. Listen to the flow of the water, the sound of the water, the bottom drains. It's like running a marathon, or trying at least, to run a marathon with a straw in your mouth. You need oxygen, you need to breathe. Well, your koi pond needs to breathe. It needs to filter properly. They talk about flow rate, your turnover rate, which is very, very critical as far as keeping a healthy environment. Bearing in mind, as I'm talking, think about the spring. Think about the river that you're standing by, or that you've ever stood by and seen all the natural elements that happen. And fish are living. So, then what happens from nitrite is, as we know, it then gets further broken down into nitrate, which is basically your waste, your end waste product. Nitrate is, as we commonly call it, liquid compost. If there's too much nitrate in the water, milligrams per liter, over 80 to 100, that's very dangerous. It can actually literally burn the fish. Their skins can literally be burnt. So it is very, very important that we have the nitrate elements also removed from the water. But now, as we're removing things from the water, we need to bring in other elements, which is coming back into that rainwater that we were talking about, that is then filtered through the earth that is busy picking up minerals. So how do we do that in this naturally, or this unnatural environment, if I can say? There's certain minerals like bio-earth, bioactive, those kind of ingredients that you need. It's an earthy product, bio-earth, which it's not the earth itself that is very good, but it's the minerals within that is carried through the water so that it becomes more alkaline. So now you can also read that if I have too much acidic water, what am I telling you? We are then reading that your koi pond hasn't got enough minerals because our pH is low and we need to build that up. But remember, we need to do that gradually, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. Ammonia is extremely toxic to koi, and what it does is it causes the gills to move into a chemical composition that changes the flow of the blood. Blood flow, of course, is critical. And that's why ammonia is so bad. Free ammonia is best for koi when we're measuring lower than 0.02 milligrams per liter. That is very little. So you want to watch that. If your ammonia is higher than that, there's already a red flag, and you need to take a proactive measure. So that just tells you where your pond and your conditioning of your pond is. Now what happens with ammonia is, why it's so bad and why it becomes so toxic is because ammonia binds up with your hydrogen atom, your water atom. And what happens there is that combination with the wrong elements, temperature for instance and pH, that changes, and that makes it extremely toxic. So let's talk about temperature for a moment. High temperature creates toxicity because what happens is that your dissolved contaminants that are in the water, they basically become toxic. What also happens is the higher your temperature, the more toxic your medication becomes. So one's got to also be careful on that front. Dissolved oxygen. Fish need oxygen in the water. The more the temperature rises, the less the oxygen is able to remain in the water. And that is critical, of course. So that's why the likes of water features, venturis, and air stones, air systems is critical. You can never have enough air in your koi pond. Again, picture that river flowing with a tremendous amount of oxygen that's there all the time. Waterfalls and so forth. Then let's look at pH. pH is a measure of hydrogen ions. That's really what it is. What's very important here to understand is that each pH decimal, let's call it pH 7. If we measure a pH 7 and we're moving over to a pH 6 or a pH 8, it basically means that each change in pH is tenfold, whether it's increase or decrease. So the tenfold, even one digit, will affect your fish severely. And that's very, very critical. Your fish can be shocked. They may not initially die, but they can have an after effect, which then becomes bacterial and fungal and so forth. So that is quite critical, especially when you're introducing fish. Be very careful from the pH that it is existing in to the pH that it is going into. Very important to have a look at those aspects. Slow changes, always slow changes when it comes to pH. pH, from high pH all of a sudden to a low pH will certainly cause severe problems. There's a close relationship between pH and alkalinity, and that creates healthy water if you have that balance right. pH causes ammonia toxicity, which we've discussed, but one needs to also understand that when you have clear water, clean water, and you're looking through it and you're saying, well, thinking, well, this is good water, you need to analyze the water. What you see with clear water and nice, it looks fresh, it's not always the case. You need to have a look at the elements. So from a husbandry skill perspective, it's extremely important that you analyze that and even keep record of it, because that will help you understand the circle of life in terms of water. So those are the most important things that I have found when it comes to water. Just an added thing, when it comes to municipal water, not everybody has boil water or natural water. But municipal water with chlorine, very, very important that you do not do water changes more than 10% at a time. That is quite critical. Do not put the hosepipe into the water, let it flow over the water and spray over the water. I've had countless of people that have lost their beautiful selection of koi by forgetting that the water was on. So be very mindful when you're doing your husbandry cleanups and husbandry skills around the koi pond. Very important to concentrate on the job at hand. Okay, so don't forget to first of all subscribe, and then also to click onto the notification button so that you can be reminded of some more exciting episodes on Koi Medic.